In this tutorial, I'll show you how to customize your options menu so that you can reorder tabs, you can add icons to your button tabs, and you can also add extra widgets to your settings. As an example, this is what my options menu looks like in my current project. It's been really useful for showcasing just the controller layout and still having all that nice functionality that comes out of the box with Lyra, especially with languages and especially with the video settings and colorblind mode. The settings menu is available through when you play the game in the editor or in a package game. So there it is. Let's go ahead and find where that widget is actually. So you can actually navigate to Tools, Debug, and then the widget reflector is this really nice tool that I've touched on a little bit in my other videos. It's a nice way to get to the widget that you're looking at. So I'm gonna pick the hit testable widget. So what we're looking at is the Lyra Settings screen. And then I'm gonna press escape and then I can just click on it to open it. Okay, and this is our widget for our settings screen. Okay, I'm going to just stop this simulation. And so this is our tab list. So it's just called Top Settings tab, and it's a widget itself. It's a horizontal tab list. And let's actually go ahead and right click on that just to find the references. And okay, so we have logic for on the when the tab is selected, we navigate to the setting, and we have logic to register all the tabs so that they get the title and the button. Okay, so let's just search for register top level tab, find references. So yeah, this is where your tabs are constructed. So whenever that widget is constructed, it registers these tabs, and those are all the names, the setting dev name that are set up in the code. So yeah, you can remove a settings tab here, you can reorder them. So for now, we're just going to test, let's say, removing the gameplay collection. So let's say you have a game that doesn't have any localization support. So the gameplay section only has the languages. Let's just say we just want to reorder all of these. So I'm going to stop this and unhook the gameplay collection. I could actually remove this execution pin. And then if I want the mouse and keyboard level tab to be first, the gamepad one to be first, let's just rehook these. And now we have a different order. So I'll keep this one here because it's great when games handle localization. Yeah, so I'm going to just play. And then when you look at the options, you'll see that you only have these options and they're all reordered. Next part, I want to cover how you can optionally add icons to your tabs. Or you could even just have no text and just the icon showing up. Whenever you register your top setting tab, there is an option for an icon brush, but it's not hooked into anything. So let's go ahead and fix that. We can, so this is a slate brush structure. So in our function, we are just going to add an input so that we can optionally add the icon per tab. So I'm just going to search for icon brush. Oh, brush. It's a slate brush. Okay, so I'm going to search for a slate brush. Okay, so optional icon. Okay, and then we can hook that into the icon brush. Okay, so now it's possible to set up an optional icon. So I'm just going to drag that out and we can make a slate brush. I just care about the size of the icon, but you can make it as intricate as you want or with any settings you want. So I'm just going to make a brush from the texture. And I'm going to make all my icons be 40 by 40. So I'm going to choose very arbitrary icons. So let's say for the keyboard and mouse, let's just have a key. Oh no, let's just search for the mouse. So that looks good. Okay, I'm just going to make some space. All right. Okay, I'm just going to copy this. And then the gamepad, I'm just going to choose the D-pad. So D-pad. This one's good. And then video, there's not really one that really represents this. So I'm just going to choose something arbitrary. So icon, I'm just going to choose this. And then our audio, I'm not sure if we have a sound icon. So icon, you know what? I'll use the icon warning for the sound, and I'll use the ability dash icon for the other one. So dash, yeah, that should be good. Save. And you'll notice that when you play, they won't show up right away, because we actually need to set up our button to be ready to receive and set what uses that icon. So I'm gonna stop this. Okay, so we need to find where the button tab is being spawned and which one it is. So in our register top level tab, this is the button that will be spawned with this information or this tab descriptor. So I'm just going to browse to it and make this small, open it. Okay, so this is the tab button that spawned. So we actually want to add a image over here. So, and put it horizontally with the text. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a horizontal box and put the text in it. And then let's add an image for our icon. Okay. Okay, so our image, we can center it vertically, and let's add a spacer so that it has some room to breathe. So spacer. All right. Okay, and both of these can start collapse just in case we don't actually have a icon for this, so that the text looks good still. So I'm going to just go to the visibility, and then let's just set that to collapse for now. Okay, and our spacer, I'm just going to give it 5 pixels of padding. Okay, so there's actually a nice function we can override to receive or whenever you set the tab label info. So you can click the drag down for interfaces, and then under tab button, double click on the set tab label info, and it'll pretty much override that function. So from the tag descriptor, drag it out. Let's break this so we can get the icon. Okay. So the icon brush, there it is. So if there is a brush image, we'll make sure to show that image. So if it is valid, so if that icon is valid, I think I forgot to mark them as variables. So this, I'll just call this one icon spacer, and is a variable. The image, I'll just call it an icon. And this one is already a variable, so that's good. Okay, so then the icon spacer, set visibility, and then this one is, I think not hit testable. because you're pressing the button, not just this item, this graphic. And okay, and I will do the same. We can have both of them go in this, and it will execute. It will set the visibility for both of them. But before we set the visibility, I'm just going to set the icon. Okay, so set image texture. Okay, so we can set the brush from texture, or technically we could just get the, let's just recombine these structure pin, and then get the image from it, or let's break it, and let's get the image from this. Okay, and then you can set the brush from that data. So just in case you had set all the settings that we saw here in the brush itself, you can do that instead of just setting the texture. So yeah, we have a image and we have the visibility. Okay, and then if I press play and I get to my options, you'll notice that it only shows the icons. And also it looks to be vertically stacked, maybe. So let's go to our designer. And okay. So maybe the horizontal box needs what the settings had on the button text block. So probably to fill horizontally and vertically. Okay, so there's problem 1 fixed. Okay, so let's me just, okay, so it looks nice vertically. Okay, and one other thing is if you just want the icons, you can let go of the spacer and you don't even need it. But if you actually want the text, that logic is set up in code, so we will actually need to call the parent function. So right here, you can right click and add a call to the parent function, and that will actually take care of setting the text. But optionally, you could also set that text logic here, because at this point you do have the tab text. But yeah, we're just going to call the functionality that was already there, and we're just appending, or we're just adding to the functionality and supporting icon brushes. Okay, so now if we play, oh, options, there you go. Now you have the icon and the text, and it looks pretty nice. All right, so my first thought when wanting to add a tab with the controller mapping was to just register a new top level tab. So then if I drag that out, you can add another execution pin. So insert execution pin before. So it's nice because you don't have to rewire all of this. So, and then let's just duplicate this, and then controller. But then I found really quick, when you play this and you open the main menu, it crashes immediately because this setting collection doesn't exist. So in this video, I'll just show a workaround for that. But first, I really want to just go over how the game settings are populated, and that it doesn't actually swap the widget. It just filters out information, which I found really interesting. So if you want to go that route, you can add dev settings or dev setting collection. I still haven't fully dived into that, but let's double click that, and let's double click register dynamic tab. And I didn't have a project file available yet, so I will say yes. Okay, so first of all, I was really curious to know where these were being set up. So I'm just going to go through it by just searching for this reference. So I saw that it was over on these two, so I'm just going to open this in Find Tools. Okay. Um, so I could see that it initializes this setting and it gives it the name video. So if you ever want to update the name of those tabs, you can do so in this file and all the other files that you find that set the display name. So it would be nice if this was some kind of configuration. So if someone does find that there's a configuration for this, please share in the comments. But yeah, so in my case, I just wanted to add a screen that has an image. So I didn't want to go through the whole process of creating a new game setting collection. I just wanted to add one texture, uh, one widget. So yeah, just to show how this actually works. So this collection is initialized. Okay, and who calls this? So this is in the game setting registry. So I'm going in details, but I'm not that familiar with the game settings, but it's good to know how it filters all that widget information. So yeah, on initialize, it registers these settings, gets it ready. But what happens when you click on the tabs? So for that, I was searching for, I stumbled on navigate to settings. Okay, so navigate to settings. I saw that it was called, uh, it was called when you, the tab is selected. So then if you double click that, it will navigate to that function. And then navigate to settings, all it does, it gets this dev name that we gave it right here when we register all these settings. Okay, and let's navigate inside. So I just press F12. So it's interesting because all it does, it finds the setting by the dev name. So essentially, all this does is that it filters all the settings that have to do with this setting. And it just gets that setting panel. So the setting panel is right here. So it takes us, it calls this function set filter state on this setting panel. So let's go see what that looks like. So that just refreshes the settings list. So essentially, from my understanding, is that whenever you click one of the tabs and it has a dev name and a dev setting, all it does is it refreshes the settings panel just to show the relevant information for that dev setting. So yeah, for my purposes, it was very much overkill. So the next part, I'm gonna actually go over how to add your own custom tabs, or how I went on about doing that. Okay, so let me just minimize this and maximize that window. Okay, what we actually want to do is we want to add another tab to the top of this, but not a dev setting. So let's go ahead and navigate over here. And then instead of register top level tab, we're going to just add a tab. So top setting tabs. Oh. So I'm just going to register tab. Okay, and then we could choose the Lyra tab button base. And the content widget will not put anything here. And then this one will just be called controller. Okay, so let's delete that one because it crashes anyways. And then let's compile. And then the tab index will be at 0. It'll just be the first tab that we have. Okay, and then in our designer, let's add another widget that would essentially just replace the settings panel when the first one is pressed. So let's go ahead and create our widget. So I'm just gonna minimize this. Let's actually find where the settings tab is so we can have a nice spot for our widget. So I'm just gonna click on that settings panel and then browse to it. Yeah. And then the setting panel is just a common user widget. But yeah, it is also a game setting panel. So I'm just going to right click user interface widget blueprint. And then let's just choose a common user widget. Okay. And then I'll call this one just W underscore settings custom one. So this will be your first custom page, or I guess I could just call it settings controller. Okay, because I want to cover over having more than one custom widget next. Okay, and then I'm just going to cheat a little bit and just copy over the border just so that I have all the information I need. So, oh yeah, so I right clicked on it and just copy. And then in the settings controller, I will right click and paste. All right. And then I'm just going to make it look nice and have the right also be the same padding. Or I guess alternatively, I could have just had those two here. Okay. And then I'm going to compile, save, and I can delete this list view settings. And I'm just going to put an image inside. So image, and yeah, this brush is okay. Or we could choose anything really. If it was a white placeholder, I could. Okay, so white placeholder, sure. Okay, so this is my first, or this is my image. So I'm just going to add some text to just to make it clear that this is the first custom image or the controller mapping. So I'm just going to add a an overlay. Oh. Okay, and then I'm going to right click on my image and then wrap with an overlay. Okay, and I'm just going to make the image fill all the space. And now I can add my text. So I'm just going to drag in my common text. I'm going to center that, and I'm just going to write this one: controller screen custom widget 1. So not exactly the most exciting widget, but you can put whatever you want on this widget. Okay, and then in our Lyra settings screen, we're going to add this one right under the settings panel. So settings, oh, whoops, wrong one. So I'm going to search for controller. Yeah, and then I'm going to drag that in right under the settings panel. Okay, and I'm just going to maximize this so we can actually see. So what this one does, it just fills all the space. So I will have the same setting here. Okay, but this one will start, it will just start collapsed. Okay. So in our graph, let's add some logic so that when you're not a dev setting, let's just go ahead and show that widget. So on tab selected, we have to find a way to know that it's not a dev setting. So we're going to actually keep track of that in a array. So let's make an array of name so that we have a reference for all the ones that are dev names. So go ahead and create a new variable, and then let's change the type to name. Okay. And then this one I will just call dev setting names. And let's update that one to be an array. All right. And then I'm going to make 5 because we have 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then let's just go ahead and copy paste all these setting names. Okay, so gamepad collection, video collection, audio collection, and the gameplay collection, which for now only has the localization settings or the languages settings. So you could also rename that one to languages if you'd like in the code. Yeah, and then so whenever this happens, we can check if this array contains that type ID. So if it contains that item, then we want to go ahead and navigate to the setting, which is just filtering out that information and updating the game settings widget. Okay, and then if it's false, then we actually want to show our newly added settings controller, which is also a variable. So I'm going to just paste that and then get that variable, or pretty much get that widget, and then set the visibility to non-hit testable. Okay. And we actually want to hide our game settings, or well, this one here, so that we don't have both showing up at the same time. So the settings panel is what it's called. For some reason, they don't show up here, unfortunately. So you have to kind of right click, settings panel. Okay, so get setting panel. So this one will set the visibility to be collapsed. Okay. And then we want to do the opposite here. We want to set, or let's duplicate this one. And we want to set our settings controller to be collapsed whenever it's a dev setting. So I'm just going to move this stuff over and surround it. Okay. So let's see what happens when we play. Okay, so it looks like I used the wrong button class. So I will go ahead and fix that. So I'm gonna stop this. So the problem, it's nice because it told me exactly what happened. So Lyra base button is not a, it's just abstract. It's not something you can spawn. So I'm going to navigate to our register tab, and I could just copy the one that is here. So it's just the Lyra button tab. So I'm going to navigate to it. And then if I go back to our event graph, I can just click this button. So it will choose whatever I have selected, which is nice. Okay, so compile, save, and let's see if that works now. Okay, so if I go to options, all right, our beautifully awful looking one is here. Okay, so there you go. Okay, so another thing I forgot is that I need to actually show the tab, or show the content whenever the settings names is set up. So I'm going to just duplicate the first one also. Okay. Okay, so the settings panel, let's make it non-hit testable. So that is the default that I saw that it's using. So self only. Okay. And then let's try that. All right. So when I play options, there you go. Now we have our widget. It doesn't have its title. Okay, so what happened is that it registers this tab, but it doesn't set the title or anything. So the function we actually want is register dynamic tab. And then we can split the structure, and let's choose the same icon than the gamepad collection has, just to save some time. So Lyra tab button, or I think it's just Lyra button tab. Okay, that's why. So it's Lyra button tab. And then I'll call this one controller. And then the tab descriptor tab text that will show up is controller. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to delete this. All right, and let's see what that does. So now when I escape options, now it shows up with the icon and everything. Okay, so the next part of this video, I'm going to cover. So now we have an extra tab with a widget, but it's not exactly scalable. Let's say if you want to add more custom tabs. So the next part of this video, we're actually going to replace this widget with an animated widget switcher. Okay, so let's stop. Navigate to the designer tab. And then under our settings controller, let's right click on that and then replace. And then you can replace it with the common animated switcher. Okay, and then let's compile that. All right, and I will rename this one to just extra tabs switcher. And compile, save. It's just the extra tab switcher. And let's delete the old references. And let's save. And then the same thing for this one here. Okay. And now it compiles and everything, but our switcher doesn't really do anything yet. But we actually need to initialize that switcher to be connected to this tab list. So what we want to do is, I'll just navigate to the graph. And then in the functions tab, you can click on override and then it's on initialized. Okay, so just as good measure, I'm just going to add the call to the parent function just in case that was doing some logic that I need. And then we're going to reference the top settings tab. So that's our tab or tabs right here. Okay, and then we can call set linked switcher. So first we're going to get this value here and set it here. So what this does is that as soon as this widget is initialized, it will pretty much go in this tab and it will get all the registered tabs and their content and it will populate the switcher. And whenever we have this switcher be visible, we will see the associated widget to the tab. So at the moment, we don't have any content actually in our setup in our tab descriptor content type. So for the Lyra tabs, we're going to just create an empty one because we're just going to pretty much hide the widget switcher. And for the other one, we need to actually set up what we want it to be. So actually for a controller, let's just select our controller settings controller. So the widget we created. And then for everything else, we could actually set up an empty widget. So I'm just going to navigate to our controller and I'm just going to duplicate it and have pretty much like an empty screen. So I'm just going to navigate and then duplicate this. And then settings, page placeholder maybe? Placeholder. Okay. And then I'm going to delete this and the overlay, so it's just empty. So this would make it so that it animates nicely from nothing to the controller page. And so in the Lyra settings screen, let's just set that content for that placeholder. Okay, so settings, page, placeholder. Okay. And another point I want to make is that uh, we register this tab dynamically right here. But another spot where you can set up the content or the tabs is in the pre-registered tabs in array info. So you could have at all the indices, it follows that. You could define your widgets here. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and define 2 tabs just to show how that works. Put in controller, and then the text is controller. The icon brush, the icon brush is just the D-pad. I guess I'll just choose the D-pad down. And okay, that looks pretty good. And then it's just a Lyra button tab. And then the content type is just the controller. Okay. And then I'm actually going to duplicate that controller just so we have an example for an extra tab. So this one will be extra settings, or settings extra. Okay. And then this one, I'll just change the color to be maybe something green, not too hard on the eyes. And then I will just call this one custom widget 2. Or I'll just update the text so we can see which tab it is and which content it is. Yeah, so let's navigate back to the Lyra settings screen. And then I will add that one as extra, and we'll call it extra settings. And then the icon brush, I'll just put nothing just to show that that still works. And then Lyra button tab. And then the content type will just be extra. So settings extra. Okay, so now that we have these pre-registered tab info, we can actually remove this connection. Or we could have just duplicate this depending on how you're setting up your tabs and what order you want them to be in. So the order is easier to set when you make it in the construction. Because these already these don't have like their index is not exactly clear. They're just added one after the other. Yeah, so let's go ahead and play and see what happens. Sweet. Okay, so we have our controller widget or extra settings. And then we have our mouse and keyboard, and you'll see that you hit this enter because there's a because the register tab logic that we have, it doesn't actually set the content, even though the content is set up in our register top level tab. So this is the next thing we're going to address. It doesn't fully crash the game, but it will in a package game. So yeah, so in that case, if you don't want to do any C++, you're better off just adding them manually like we did in the last step. But yeah, this will work. And yeah, it looks pretty good. Right, so let's double click on register dynamic tab. Okay, and then you can get the code off of my GitHub repo. And yeah, let's just paste it over this function here. So the issue is that the created tab content widget is not actually set. So it's not ever created because the descriptor, so the content type is set here. But we're never using it to actually create the tab. So I'm just going to paste all that code in. All of this logic pretty much comes from the setup tabs function, which is using the pre-registered tab info array that we just set up, or we just made use of. Pretty much this code path wasn't being hit if you're registering dynamically. So yeah, so this logic is here if you want to have a look. I'm just going to go back to where I was. So Yeah, so whenever you register this dynamic tab, uh, if there is a content type and the dynamic tab is null, which would be true, we just create a new widget and broadcast that we create a new widget. So let's keep in mind that this widget will not really be shown, but if you want that behavior, then it's great that this is here, because it actually does, like it used to actually call register tab, but with the empty or null created tab widget. So this just fixes this, but it might also be intended behavior. Depends in what other ways you want to use a Lyra tabless widget. If you want to use that tab content type. Okay, so after pasting this code, and again, I just surrounded this just to show that these are the changes I have for future Lyra updates. So I'm going to go ahead and close my project. And I'm going to run from here. So I'm just going to make sure development editor, and this is my project that I created. And let's go ahead and debug this or run. All right, so make sure to have the output log open just to see what's going on. So if you don't have your output log open, you can navigate to window and then just click on the output log. Yeah, so let's go ahead and play. Okay, and then let's go to options. Okay, no more problem. But the last part that I've seen and would like to have your help with is that since the widget switcher is collapsed, I think it stops updating. So it updates to the empty or the default widget, and then it doesn't animate to the new one. Uh, I think because the previous one wasn't visible. So how I fixed it is basically I just made sure that the animation length was 0. But it would really be nice to just get this nice animation going. So I'm just going to stop this and I'm going to navigate to the Lyra settings screen. Okay. And then in the extra tab switcher, I'm going to change this transition duration to 0, which makes me sad. Okay, I'm just going to maximize this, so F11, and then Alt P to play. So when I when I press escape, options, now it works as intended, but it doesn't have this nice animation that we had previously. Before, we had the settings that are using dev settings actually have a content. So we saved a crash, but we lost some nice smoothness. So yeah, definitely if anyone has any insights on the animation or animated widget switcher, that would be lovely. Yeah, and as you can see, if your settings names run long, it ends up not really fitting here. So it might be good to just use icons or choose words that are shorter. And again, you have to keep in mind localization in different languages and their length of their words. So yeah, the animated widget switcher was a nice solution just to be able to scale any new widget that I would like to have in my settings menu, and also just to learn more about that CommonUI feature. And it's been nice not having to have logic or unique logic for any time something is pressed to hide, unhide specific widgets. And the animated widget switcher was perfect for this case. Um, so yeah, this is more of my learning about CommonUI and customizing what's already there in Lyra. So yeah, thanks for watching.